Okay. So we'll be discussing the road to malaria eradication in sub-Saharan Africa, and I'll be hosting on behalf of our initiative, and the guest will be Shitu Dikrula. He's a research scientist. He's a Nigerian, but he works with the University of Ghana. He's a researcher there, and they are the ones in charge of some of the malaria research within West Africa. So there have been a lot of issues surrounding malaria. I mean, malaria has been one of the most challenging things that we've been struggling with in sub-Saharan Africa, and over how many years now? A lot of years. We still are battling with it. We've not been able to resolve or solve the issues, but hopefully someday we will be able to, and then we'll be able to solve the in Nigeria. So there are a lot of things I'll be discussing. We'll start from the beginning on explaining what malaria is, the challenges that we are facing, the epidemiology of malaria, and then to a very shocking news about malaria that I'll be bringing to you guys in the next few minutes when the guest is on. So technically we'll be blowing your mind away with new information. Well, some people have heard of it while some haven't, and at this point we would like to share this information with everyone. So we'll be taking when we're having the conversation, for those that would like to ask any question, can just wave at us so that we can know that you have a question. Although I will notify everyone when we will be taking questions. So we'll discuss the causes of malaria, the environment that malaria thrives, the funding of malaria, how it has been used, the stage that we are now, what we've been doing so far, what the government has been doing, and then the channel of project that is malaria is supposed to be used, that we're supposed to use for eradicating malaria, and then why we haven't gotten there yet. So in 5 minutes the guest will be joining us. So if there's any kind of pre-question that you want to ask, I can just jot that down before he joins us in the next 5 minutes, and if there's any other conversation that anyone wants to have, we can do that. So RA initiative is an initiative that deals with that focuses on a universal achievement of development across Africa, and we are targeting health, education, empowerment of youth and everyone, and peace as well as governance. So while we are talking about health and every other challenge that we're having in different scenarios and in different forms, we're talking about empowerment. And why we are doing this is because it's been identified that there's no specific role in life that can just work on its own or that can just move by itself. There are some factors or some in the ecology of life that we are in. There are several things that make some things work well. So while we are shouting for, we are clamoring for universal health coverage, and we are also not talking about empowering people so that they can have affordable pay or have the right opportunity to work, or giving them the sound environment that they are in. So I mean, it's not going to be universal because there's some things that make all these things work. If you look at the countries that would use as the international standards, most of these countries have to an extent a system that makes sure that everybody deserves a decent life, a decent lifestyle. No matter how difficult it is, you'll be opportune to have a decent lifestyle. And that is why you live in any of this part of the world, eating, like feeding yourself, shouldn't be a problem. Housing yourself, at least to an extent, shouldn't be a problem. It does not have to be luxurious, but So the point is, these people will be able to in and a afford a lifestyle. I know with the extra lifestyle, but in Africa, in Nigeria, specifically the highest population, it's been a difficult task for us to manage, and that's because of the challenge that we're having in inequality, poor governance, poverty, illiteracy, no education, and a whole lot of that. So we have our guests in. So that's what we are basically doing, and then we would be. So we are going to. Okay. Okay. So we are waiting for him. So to join in. So those are the things that we'll be addressing as we go further. So welcome, Dolashiti. Agavela introduced. So we have our guest now. Agavela introduced uh, him. He's a research scientist from the University of Ghana. So while I'm putting University of Ghana, I want people to know that he's in not. So welcome
Yeah,
to
thank you.
station. Yeah. So I don't think we can see. Okay, we can see you now. Okay, it's fine. So welcome once
Is it
again.
clear now?
Yes, I guess so. But I think you're slanted in a way, and then I have to bend my
Okay,
head to.
something like
I think
this.
yes, this is better. Okay. So
Okay,
welcome once again. Before we go
thank
on,
you.
I've introduced you. Yeah. So
Okay.
I've introduced you. But if you would like to give us a bit, a brief of what you do at the University of Ghana and your career in the space of malaria.
Okay,
Mm.
so thank you very much for the opportunity. As you rightly said, my name is Shitu Bukumi Zikrola. So maybe the Bukumi will sound to more southwestern that, okay, this is one of our own, this is a your boy. Okay, so I'm a microbiologist. I finished from Alikma University. Then I came here in Ghana to do my master's in microbiology. So I did my research on transmission of lymphatic filariasis. So basically, I work with mosquitoes. So after that, then there's a project on insecticide resistance in malaria vectors. So basically, we just deal with anything that has to do with insecticide resistance in malaria vectors. So that means we work directly on mosquitoes to check their resistance mechanism and how they become resistant to the malaria vector control that we are using at the moment. So for the past 3 years, I've been doing malaria related research. So yeah, so that's what I do for the past 3 years. So I work on a project with Department of Microbiology at the University of Ghana. So I'm happy to be here to share my experience, and I can only wish and hope that every one of us will learn something from this talk, and we'll be able to know at least more about what we already know about malaria in Nigeria and Africa as a whole.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the introduction once again. So so malaria, can you just I think everybody in Africa, almost everybody in Africa has heard what malaria is. But it's been identified. Some people just say, oh, when people are sick in Africa and then I just sick and everything is just malaria. Oh, it's malaria and typhoid. It's malaria, I'm sick, I have malaria, and then you start again and what exactly is malaria and what causes malaria? And is malaria a thing, a disease, or a drug, or what exactly is malaria? Just an introduction of what malaria is to us.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for that opportunity again. So, as you said, in Africa generally, not just Nigeria, I mean, Africa generally, anything fever is malaria, you know. And what exactly is malaria? So malaria is a disease caused by Plasmodium parasite, but it's transmitted by mosquitoes. So if you remember earlier when I was introducing myself, I said I work on insecticide resistance in malaria vectors. That means there are something that has to take these parasites from where they grow to where they become infectious. So it is only when the malaria parasite has been introduced to humans and the human is susceptible to it, that is when we talk about you having malaria. So malaria is caused by Plasmodium falciparum generally, but we have other species that cause malaria. But let's just stick with Plasmodium falciparum because it causes 99% of the whole disease. So yeah, so it caused by parasites, Plasmodium, then transmitted by mosquitoes. So I would like to keep it short. So if there's any other question, then I can take it from there.
So technically, mosquito is the cause of malaria. Okay. All right.
So I would say mosquito is the driver. But it is caused by Plasmodium parasite.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for sharing that because some people think every mosquito that just bites you is what would give you malaria. So that's why I said, is it technically?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the epidemiology of malaria in sub-Saharan Africa and Nigeria? Why is it such a big deal that we have been spending so much on, and why is it something that everybody, when you are just sick, are just thinking is malaria? So what's the epidemiology? Why is it so? What's the epidemiology of malaria?
Thank you so much. But please, I'm reading out a question right now. Somebody asked, why do mosquitoes don't get sick themselves with the parasite? Please, I would like you, the host, to please note that question. I would like to talk about it later, but let me answer your question first. So you were asking about the epidemiology.
Yes.
You won't believe that in 2020, we still have over 228 million people worldwide that are having malaria as a case. And as I speak to you right now, over 500,000 of people, we're talking about close to 500,000 people, still dies of malaria every year. But somebody would ask, but malaria has been there for, almost 25 decades now. So why is it that you people, you are still fighting it and all that? Malaria is one of the smartest disease, and it is caused by one of the smartest parasites, and it is transmitted by one of the smartest vector, which is mosquito. Why do I say this? You see, malaria started with Plasmodium falciparum having different stages in humans. We have something we call sporozoites. We have something we call trophozoites. We have something we call merozoites. We have something we call gametocyte. I'm not going to bore our audience with all these big terms because it wouldn't really make sense to them. But what I am trying to say basically is when mosquito picks parasites, which is Plasmodium, and transmit it to human, first of all, what the parasite does is it goes straight into the liver. It spends 24 to 48 hours in the liver, then grow to merozoid, then go into the bloodstream. So why am I saying this is that means we have stage of malaria that is within the liver. Then we have another stage that's in the red blood cells. Then we have another stage that just hide under the skin of human. So what this really means is that at each stage of their life cycle, they express different antigen. So when you talk about maybe a disease that currently we have a vaccine to, what we normally do as a research scientist is that you take the antigenic portion of the pathogen, which can be virus, which can be bacteria, or which can be parasite, like malaria. So that antigenic portion is the epitope where it's causing the disease. So you now express this, you make human be able to produce antibody against that antigenic portion of the pathogen. But with malaria, as I said, we have a stage in the liver and a stage in the red blood cell. The stage in the red blood cell can produce almost 60 variant genes. It can express it on the epitope. So that means if you want to produce a very, very good vaccine, that means the vaccine has to contain antibody to all these 60 variant epitope, which is, if you really know much about vaccine, you know that is almost impossible to do that. So that is, basically, that is why we still have malaria, because it expresses different variants on the epitope. So that's why it's very difficult to make vaccine for it over this
Ordinarily, in different terms, if you want to kill it now, you are not even sure where to even catch it to kill it, because it's just spread in different places and it's just changing its forms. So unlike some other kind of diseases that you find the antigen and then you're able to like produce a vaccine or a drug for it. Well, that's interesting. So mosquito is small, but so you said we have about 280 million. That's 280 million malaria cases worldwide. So what's it like in Nigeria and then maybe West Africa?
Okay, so I would like to say that one of the biggest drivers of malaria, as far as Africa is concerned, is Nigeria. Okay. Most of other African nations have been able to deal with malaria in one way or the other, but because of a lot of factors, not just one, we still have malaria in Nigeria. So, for example, Algeria, about 3 weeks ago, just declared declared by WHO to be malaria-free. So what that means is, even though we're talking about Africa in general, some of African countries have been able to find their way around malaria and reduce the cases. So the biggest 4 drivers of malaria in Africa generally still remains Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi. So the reason why these countries are the biggest driver is because they have heterogeneity of the plasmodium in their country. What do I mean by this? As I said, we have different stages of the malaria parasite. So that means that in these 4 countries, they have only when we have these different parasite that is affecting people, that's where we can talk about getting effective method to control it. So, as I will say again, Nigeria is one of the biggest driver of malaria in Africa, and about 95% of all the cases that is occurring worldwide right now, as far as 2019 data is concerned, African region still accounts for 95% of the general malaria epidemiology. So that shows that malaria is Africa. Africa is malaria for now.
Okay. Yeah, so in the past decades, and when drugs have been coming up and all of that, we've been able to manage it, treat it, and all of that. Can you just take us through the process, a short process of how they've been able to develop a drug for treatment and not a vaccine? And then after that, some drugs were stopped, they could not continue with some drugs, and then we had to use other type of drugs, and then they said, okay, let's change from this type to the other one. So just a brief roadmap.
So there's something we call resistance, and resistance is what happens when you try to kill a pathogen and the pathogen is not dying. That's the simplest term I could use. So what resistance means is you are trying to shoot somebody with a gun straight to the head and the person is not dying, which is almost difficult to explain. Why would I shoot somebody and the person is not dying? So that's exactly what is happening. At first, we have chloroquine that we're using against malaria, and it was working effectively. And even people were using it as prophylaxis. Prophylaxis means that you can take it, and when you go to where malaria is, you will not come down with the disease. So what all this means is that because malaria parasite is able to express almost 60 variant genes, as I said earlier, that is why they render chloroquine ineffective. What does that mean? So chloroquine is able to target the trophozoite stage in the bloodstream, and over 10 years, malaria parasite is able to mask their way, that the target site of the chloroquine, that means where chloroquine would shoot to, if I'm using a layman example, if you are shooting somebody, you expect it to die. So if you are shooting me in front of my head, then if I am the malaria parasite, I'm able to produce a bulletproof to protect the front of my head. So if you shoot front of my head, it's just going to be retracted by the bulletproof on my head. So that is why we had to develop another drug, which is what we use, the ACTs, the artemisinin combination therapy. So what that one does is it attacks different targets from hydroxychloroquine. So what chloroquine targets, we have to change the formation so that artemisinin will target another region of the parasite. But even what we are experiencing right now is, after some time that we have used artemisinin combination therapy, ACTs, we are seeing the malaria parasite develop resistance to that one too. That is why we have to do something we call integrated vector control for malaria. So what that means is we have to look for another way by which we don't just target the parasite alone. We look for other ways by which we can control the disease. And one of the other ways is to control the vector that transmits the disease. So if the parasite is developing resistance, they still need a vector to take the gametocyte from human to mosquito themselves, then make it sporozoite, go and infect another human. So if we can target the vector which are the mosquito, then we can use the two arms, targeting the vector and targeting the parasite. So at least if they are developing resistance to the drug, then we can target them from their transmitting vehicle. But what we see now as well is that the mosquito themselves, they've developed resistance to almost the control method that we are using, because the long-lasting insecticide-treated nets, which we all know, the blue net that malaria control, they share. When you go to the clinic, they give it to you. It is pyrethroid base. So most, and the indoor residual spray. So indoor residual spray means all this Raid, Mortein, all those spray that we use to try to kill mosquito before we go to bed. So the target site of this, mosquito themselves is able to develop resistance and able to modify or create something like a mutation. So the target site is supposed to kill the mosquito, but because they've been able to mask their way around it, the insecticide is not able to kill them. So that means we are fighting two battles, resistant in the parasite and resistant in the vector.
And both forming resistance. So they are making it difficult. So you are trying to tackle the parasite problem. The vector, which is the mosquito, too, you are trying to provide solution problem. Okay. So for those that are asking questions, we are jotting the questions down, and then we are going to ask it when we get to a stage of the question. So we've tried different types of treatment for people, and then indoor residual spray, having chemicals and all of that. So which is trying to target the vector itself, that's the mosquito. But how about eradicating mosquito? What has it been so far? Is it possible? Can we clear mosquito? I know it's difficult in Africa, and especially because even if we try it in some places, other places will not follow suit, or it will be difficult to do. But is there any hypothesis of how to, even if it is not factual? Maybe I have heard from some technological way to undo these mosquitoes. So is there any other ideology, maybe not fact yet, but that can be possibly tried?
Okay, that is very, very interesting. So one thing that is happening in the world of mosquito or mosquito-based research is what you just talked about. The fact that, or the hypothesis that, can we just eradicate mosquito? But what most people found out, that mosquito have their own sort of good thing that they do to the environment. So what if we look for a way to make mosquitoes refractory to parasite? That means that they will not be able to pick the parasite or transmit the disease. So that one is more achievable. So what is happening right now in the world of mosquito is there's something they call gene drive in mosquito. So what gene drive basically means is that we try to sequence the whole genome of mosquito, then try to see a particular portion of the mosquito that is responsible for the transmission of the disease, and see if you can create some mutation in that particular region so that they are not able to support development of the parasite in them, and they are not able to transmit the disease. That is one. The other one is that, which supports the first hypothesis of eradicating them, is that why don't we do some research on male mosquitoes? And so one thing about mosquitoes is that the female mosquitoes, they only mate once. So when they mate once, then they continue to lay their eggs. So one thing we could
once
through their lifetime, yeah. Then they store the sperm. Then every other time they get blood from human, they just use develop to nourish their eggs. So one thing we are thinking about is that why don't we engineer a male mosquito so that when it mates with a female mosquito, it's not able to produce eggs. So if you make the spermatozoa of a male mosquito to be refractory or to be non-viable, something like that. So if you make it non-viable, that means it will not be able to develop or not be able to produce eggs, because it's not going to fertilize with the ovum of the female mosquito. So if they are not able to produce eggs, that means we are able to control the number of the mosquitoes that are around, and basically can lead to the eradication. So that's the big project that is ongoing right now. It is spearheaded by the Bureau in Benin. So what they are doing is they want to engineer male mosquito. But what I want to say about that is that thing has been successful in a way, because in Australia, they were able to engineer a male mosquito. So what that male mosquito will do is it will go into the environment and mate with all the female mosquito. But instead of the female mosquito going ahead to go and lay the eggs, they will not be able to lay the eggs. So if male mosquito is able to mate with all female mosquito around, that means they are not going to produce any offspring, and basically that leads to the eradication of the mosquito. They are able to do that in Australia. But the problem with African setting is that when they try to do the same thing here, what happened was when they make the male sterile, so after releasing the male mosquito into the wild to go and mate with female, what we realize is that the male mosquito that are in the wild are more effective than those ones that were engineered in the lab. So what that means is, if there is a female, if you have to mate that female, there is always a competition between the male mosquito that was made in the lab and the male mosquito that was in the wild. So the male mosquito in the wild, they are more effective, stronger, use any words, than the one in the lab. So the males in the lab are not able to mate the female mosquito. So, and another thing we realize that the longevity, they are not living as long as the males in the wild. So the research is still ongoing. We are trying to see a way by which we can make it possible that whatever we are seeing in the lab, because in the lab they are performing very well, they are mating with the female, that we are able to translate whatever we are seeing in the lab into the environment. So that's what the research is on now, ongoing.
They don't have strong wing capacity. I just okay.
Exactly.
So we'll go now to the most significant parts now. Apart from this, which is still in trial and all of that, now for some years now, some few years now, they have been talking about vaccine, and vaccine has now been, so a trial of the vaccine has started. And then if we say Nigeria is one of the countries that have the highest prevalence of malaria and accounts for a large number of it. But then somehow, when the trial started, Nigeria did not participate in the trial of the vaccine. So some other countries were selected for the trial of the vaccine. So how did this happen? What actually happened? Because by now we should be hoping that a vaccine will come and they will test it in Nigeria to see if there's if the study population in Nigeria would be effective to it. And then we can say maybe in the next 5 years, malaria would have been done in Nigeria. So what's the rationale behind this, and what exactly is happening in the field of the research and the World Health Organization?
Okay, bureaucracy. Okay, so malaria vaccine. as you rightly said, we started malaria vaccine, then we roll out. So what really happened in practical is that when this vaccine was made, a call out was made by WHO that if you are interested in having your country to be part of those that will try this vaccine, you submit a request. So about 100 countries submitted a request of being part of the testing, which Nigeria was part actually. But we cannot just go ahead and test all these 100 countries at a time. We need to start with some country first. Okay. So WHO thought it wise, with all the guidelines, with all the strategic planning and all that, they had to start with 3 countries. The reason why they are starting with 3 countries is that if there is anything that has to come out from this vaccine, then we'll be able to at least curb it in that region. So these 3 countries that they started with was Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. And if you look at these 3 countries so well, they didn't even roll out the malaria vaccine in all the regions in the country. They just roll out it in specific region. In Ghana, like just 2 regions. Kenya, the same, and Malawi, the same. So what this would mean is that even though everything about the vaccine has been tested and it has been proven that it's safe and we can use it, except for few what do we call it? Side effects, with just few side effects. So it just causes fever. Then at the site of injection, it can have excessive swelling of the region where the injection was made. So it is always good to have a pilot study of it. So that's what is happening right now. It's just a pilot study. So after 2 years, if everything works as planned, then everybody is going to have their share of the vaccine. So it's not really a big deal. It's just about pilot study. Just try to test it first. If everything goes well, then we can roll it out to every other place or every other country that will be interested. But as far as it is now, that's about the vaccine.
Some of the rumors was that some countries, that if a country does not, which is one of the things that has to do with bureaucracy and poor health management in some countries, that if you do not meet some specific criteria, example like meeting the percentage of the MDG and then some other factors inclusive, so that it was also part of the criteria why Nigeria was not selected. How true is this, and how damaging can poor health management and poor health policy transporting it to other parts of the country to test it here where it is actually growing, so that it can actually have some kind of efficacy for other people? So how true is this, and how does this actually affect poor management, poor policies, poor implementation, poor drafting, poor management of healthcare as regards malaria in Nigeria?
Okay, so Nigeria in perspective now. As you rightly said, talking about MDGs, talking about all those other things that are related to not just malaria, health. You see, when I was talking about it, I ran through it. I have my reasons. And when I say I ran through it, I said that WHO has their specific guidelines for selecting the country that they have guidelines by which they share for selecting those countries. So what that means is that I don't really want to go into the bureaucracy, even though I started with answering by saying that bureaucracy. So one thing about Nigeria is why you have to either agree or not agree or just stay on a position is the fact that, for example, when you look at polio vaccine, when they introduced it in Nigeria, there was a problem with the fact that we're using a live attenuated vaccine. And some of the vaccine that was introduced then were not properly attenuated. So after giving it to some people, it reverts back to the live virus itself, and it causes polio instead of protecting them against polio virus. So, I mean, so that is why when you talk about vaccine, it's always a big deal. You know, you can always have a position to stay. You can have excuse to do what or not. But the fact is, we are not doing so well as far as putting things in place, getting other things. For example, now, in the northern part of the state, northern part of Nigeria, they have the highest burden of the parasite. And if you check all the research that is malaria based in Nigeria, they are based there. So that would mean that everything that has to do with malaria control or treatment or vector control has to go into those places first. So if those places are not feeding back to, for example, WHO about the progress report in that particular area, that means the WHO will not have enough information to include such country in the pilot study. That's why I said it's just better to just sway it around, because if you are not part of the team that is working there and not releasing the result as timely as possible, you will not really have in-depth knowledge of whatever is happening right there. So it is best just to say that let's just hope that by the end of the pilot study, all these other countries will be ready, will be available to take on the, to take on the vaccine. So that's why I can say as far as the not participating in the vaccine right now is concerned.
Okay, so there are some conspiracy theories. So sorry, for those that are asking questions, we are jotting down your questions, and we would answer them. So then say, well, was there any data showing that it was a vaccine that caused the polio? Okay, so we'll come to that. So there are some conspiracy theories about the big pharmaceuticals and the what they are actually benefiting from the industry of malaria. I mean, malaria drugs keeps increasing. It was sometime 150, 200, 300, 350, and 600, then 1,000, you have 2,000, you have some that are even 3,000 naira now. So can there be any, are we supposed to believe these conspiracy theories, or is just one of those conspiracy theories?
So one thing about conspiracy theories is that some of them are true. So why do I say this? For example, I don't know if you have access to a data that was published by a pharmacy, I won't mention the name, in the US about retracting the use of hydroxychloroquine for COVID-19. So what the pharmacy came out to say was that the hydroxychloroquine was not so effective against COVID-19. But after they published the data, people go into their data to see their methodology and find out that there are lots of things that are not really right about their publication. So what this would mean is that because they want a particular thing, they want a particular group of people to patronize their product, they have to produce something that will bring other products down. So conspiracy is there, and people are just trying every day. And you know, one thing is competition. A lot of people are producing drugs, a lot of people are producing vaccine, a lot of people are producing a lot of things that could help public health. But the only way that one can surpass the other is how well they are able to advertise, or they are able to promote their product. So it is there that some people, they say a lot of things, or some people, they increase, they don't want malaria incidents to go down because they'll be able to still selling their drugs, and researchers will still be able to get funds to do research that has to do with malaria. So all those things are there and they are real. So, but the truth is, they can be really true to some extent, and they can be really, really untrue to some extent. So it's 50-50. It's there, and yeah.
Okay, so we technically just have the WHO to be able to, we have WHO that will be helping us to manage whether it is true or not. So it is the universal body that no matter what anybody wants to do, those ones will help us to checkmate everything. So I'll pick some questions. First of all, um, somebody asked that the polio vaccine, that how was this? So I think this one is basic everywhere. Pfizer came in. No, that was for meningitis anyway. But it's been basic that so many companies have come to Nigeria and Africa to come and test some vaccines, and then they bring the placebo and test the actual ones in their country, and then at the end of the day damage and kill some children in Africa. So I think that one is actually
Okay,
very much.
so maybe we should just say that you are in the area of research. You might have information about this. That's why you're able to mention Pfizer, and you're able to talk about meningitis and all that. The person that asked that question, I'm very sure, is not privileged, or she is not privileged to this information. So what we would say is that there are a lot of publications to back this assertion that polio virus was caused by the vaccine that they introduced. And that is even right now, I'm sure if the person is still here, you can just browse what they call vaccine-derived polio virus. Vaccine-derived polio virus. If you're able to browse that, I'm sure you get a lot of information to support what I just said earlier about the fact
Okay.
that the vaccine reverted and caused the virus. Yeah.
Okay, so another question is, so somebody asked, so I'm just going to start with the questions now. Somebody
So this question is really, really a brilliant one. So one thing about mosquito is that nobody will tell you that mosquito is getting sick or not, because nobody is testing mosquito for fever. Nobody is testing mosquito for symptoms of malaria. But what I would say is that the particular stage of the parasite that the mosquito picked from human is the gametocyte, is the sexual stage. And those ones, they are not infectious. So if a mosquito picks the male gametocyte and the female gametocyte and they fuse in the mosquito, that's when they produce oocyst. And that's when they go ahead to produce sporozoid. And the sporozoid migrates from the abdomen of the mosquito to the thorax. So it's only the sporozoid that is infectious and is only found in the thorax. So nobody knows whether the mosquito
that
are
mosquito
getting
is
down
sick or
or not.
not.
But what I would say about that is there's something we call fitness course in mosquito study. And what that means is that it's not all mosquitoes that is able to pick the sexual stage that are able to support their development into sporozoid. So some of them, when they pick this sexual stage, by the way of fusion of these gametes, they lead to the death of the mosquito as well. So there are a lot of mosquitoes that have died as a result of picking the parasite, and the parasite outweigh them. So some of the mosquitoes too, they need something we call self-mediated immunity to the parasite to be able to develop them. So that's a huge topic on its own, because even inside the mosquito gut, we have a lot of bacteria that has to be present before they can develop a parasite. So if those mosquitoes
Okay.
are not present, that means they will not support the development of the parasite. So
Okay.
for mosquito getting sick, because we're not testing them for fever and all that, so no one can say.
Okay, so another question is, somebody asked, do other continents have malaria? I think you have answered that. And then with that, so one of the other questions was that the safety of the vaccine, and the fever, what's the safety score for the trial vaccine at the moment?
Okay, so if the person do not mind, you can send me a message. The reason why I'm saying that is, when you're asking us when you're asking for safety score, that means you are interested in technical answers. So if I'm
Yeah,
telling you that,
is
if
is
I'm
some
telling you that they
is
use
interested in that.
LD 50, nobody will understand that. So if you really want to know more about the technical aspect of the vaccine, you can please send me a message. I will reply it. But what I will say is that, before a vaccine can be rolled out, it has to pass through different
The
stages.
clinical trial.
And this RTSS has passed through all those stages. And the only side effect to RTSS, which is the malaria vaccine, is the fact that it causes fever, one, and at the site of injection, it can lead to excessive swelling of the place. So that's the only side effect that RTSS causes for now. And for the past how many years that it has been rolled out, there has been a lot of studies to monitor the efficacy. So for now, we've not seen anything that is really, really dangerous as far as it is concerned. But if you need more technical question, and if you have more technical question, you can please send it to me, then I'll answer you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So okay, Daniel. So Daniel, you can reach out to him. So Daniel is in the field of he's also a researcher, so I can tell. So I mean, you guys can share. You can share information with him, and you can also state some other of his own concerns. So and then so I guess that would be so. If there are any questions, please. So if you have any question or you have any addition from our audience, any questions or any addition that you want to just please, could you try to? Okay, so we have a
Do you
question.
think it's
Yeah,
necessary?
do you think it's necessary to get the vaccine? So we can start with that while we wait for
Okay.
other
So
questions.
do I think it's necessary to get the vaccine? Yes. So why do I think so? Vaccine is the only way to prevent about 400,000 deaths annually as a result of malaria. Vaccine is the only way to prevent people under 5 years of age that are dying from malaria every year. Vaccine is the only way to prevent what we call severe malaria cases, which can be cerebral malaria, which can lead to anemia, which has a lot of complications.
Yeah,
So,
lots.
and as far as malaria vaccine is concerned, the reason why we have to get it is people is already on it has already undergone a pilot study, which is still ongoing in some countries right now. So before it is introduced anywhere, Nigeria specifically, that means they would have tested it and made sure that it is safe to be used. So if it is safe, then there's nothing stopping us from using the vaccine.
Okay. So thank you for your. I think there was some questions. I don't know, Daniel, if there's any other question that you would like to
How do we
ask.
antagonize
So
vaccine resistance in Nigeria?
okay, yeah. Okay. I think that one there are a lot of things to that anyways. I mean, well,
So
it's
now,
yeah.
please let me take this. So, Daniel, I really like this question you just asked right now. And that is why I was preventing myself from explaining into deep about technicalities of the vaccine. And I'm happy that you yourself, you raised this question. So, for example, when I was talking about VRDR, vaccine-derived polio vaccine, you know already that a lot of people have their issues with use of vaccine. So if we talk more about the fact that vaccine can cause disease, that means we are giving people more reason why not to take the vaccine. So that is why some of this topic is just better to just paraphrase it and talk about it technically. I hope you understand what I mean. So the vaccine that will be rolled out in the next couple of decades is not going to be like those ones that we've seen. This one is going to undergo a series of testing. That is what is happening right now to COVID-19 vaccine. It's because people are advocating that they will not even use the vaccine if you produce the vaccine. For example, you hear about the 5G story. You hear about the fact that vaccine can, if they give you vaccine, they can be able to
We are
control your
chipping.
life. They can be able to control
Yeah.
everything, you know. So a lot of things that that is associated with people not wanting to take vaccine. That's why we just don't want to talk more about taking the about the side effects or about the possible problem that could be associated with taking the vaccine. So let's just stick with the fact that in 2020, going forward, any vaccine that will be rolled out in Africa would have passed through extensive research base that people that have more knowledge would have checked everything that is related to the vaccine and make sure that everything is safe, then we all can use it. I'm sure from 2020 going forward, if any vaccine is rolled out, it shouldn't be any vaccine that will revert to causing disease in people. I'm very
Okay,
sure.
let me add to that question. So, why we have vaccine uptake hesitancy in Nigeria per se? Before now, when you are just giving people injection, is a cultural and social kind of thing that is one of the basic factors to that. And then something that Africans have been used to their own traditional kind of this thing before, until when the introduction of Western or European medicine started, and then people were at least trying to take it. Even when they even take it, they still do not trust. Research has shown that so many people do not trust all these things. So they still base their primary source of treatment to their traditional medicine, until when I don't know if you know so much about why we have research ethics committee, why we have all around the world, and why WHO, World Health Assembly, started that in so many years ago. The reason is because they've identified that some people want to profit on some of all these things, use people for different kind of tests. I mean, look at syphilis that happened in the USA. There's so many drugs, thalidomide, that was happening in Germany, that they just test people. Then when they give them this vaccine, people start dying, or some people they give birth to their children deformed. So many vaccine trials that has been going on, and some of these people clinical. It's not like they are producing fake. They intentionally try this thing without completing a standard trial. And then coming back to Nigeria, Pfizer came into Nigeria. There was meningitis, this thing in Nigeria then. Then Pfizer came, and because they have been trusted that, okay, vaccines work, people have been saying, okay, vaccines work. And then you came around, you used a subsidized, let me use that. I want to use an English that everybody can actually understand. Subsidized kind of, or no, substandard rather, substandard kind of vaccine on children. And then when you use this, a lot of the children died, and many of them were deformed, blind, and so many things happened to them. So that was one of the biggest thing that happened in Africa, that created another kind of social and behavioral kind of cultural kind of resistance to vaccine in the northern part of Nigeria. Like, as you can see, it's not so much in the south. So people take, even the few people that just resist, maybe because maybe some side effects that they see that some children have, not knowing that yes, some people will have side effects. So, but it's not something that when you want to go and administer vaccine in a community in the south, that you start seeing people run away. No, people will be telling you, you've not vaccinated my own child, you've not done that. So that particular episode of what happened in Kano then was the major blow of what actually created a very kind of this thing in the northern part of, and it's not the northern part of Nigeria, I mean, because we've worked where vaccines have been rolled out there. So to just answer that question, so I think the other part that you mentioned was that that those some of these vaccines are by some pharmaceutical companies, but the one that is being managed by the World Health Organization and international organizations will not follow this kind of mechanism. So I hope that was it. I was able to answer uh, that. To add on to that. Okay, so any other question is, can the person who has malaria donate blood? Interesting question. So please, can you help us answer that question?
Okay, so Technically, no. So
Okay.
if you go for blood donation, there are a series of tests that they are supposed to run for you. One of them is malaria, one of them is HIV, one of them is hepatitis. The reason is that some parasites or some organisms are able to survive in the blood. So if these parasite or if this pathogen are in the blood, that means if you transfer blood from one person to another, you might likely be transferring the parasite from that person to the other person. So if somebody that has malaria, for example, high parasitemia, that means that they have high amount of the parasite in their blood, is wants to donate blood. What the people that are in charge of blood donation should do is to screen the person, make sure the person take the anti-malaria, reduce the malaria parasite load, then the person can give the blood. But while the person is having hyperasitemia, you shouldn't donate any blood.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And at this juncture, we would like to come to the end of this conversation. And so, I mean, the road now for eradication in sub-Saharan Africa and in Nigeria is the vaccine. And hopefully, I think the trial has been for like 2 years now. So I
Yeah.
think by next year or so, if everything goes out fine, we might be able to have it across Africa and West Africa. And we hope that our ministries of health will do the needful, and states will partner in rolling out of all. I mean, when the international standards rolls out vaccine, it's always very effective than when maybe some organization, some pharmacy, or some these things roll it out. So just like every other vaccine we've been seeing in the country. So hopefully, we will be able to achieve that. So thank you all for participating in this, and really enjoy. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
too.
Didi. Thank you to our guests. I hope you continue to invite more people to enlighten. So we will continue to invite. So before the end of the month, we'll be having some other discussions that will be coming up from next week. We have World Blood Donor Day, and then we'll be talking about the importance of blood donation in why people should participate in blood donation. And we'll give several reasons to why it is, and clear some misconceptions of blood donation. And then we have several other information. So just look out for on RA initiative page, and then you always see some of this information there. So thank you everyone for participating, for the questions, for those that joined in, and those that have been waving at us, and those that have been giving us high five and all of that. Thank you very much. So see you next time.
Bye bye.